All right. Hello, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. I think people will continue to trickle in. I believe that this is going to be the smallest group. I'm doing this webinar 3 times, and this one's pretty late for many people around the world. So this was for sure the smallest group. So for those of you that were able to make it and give a little bit of your time to learning a little bit more about project-based learning, I'm really glad you're here. I am going to get myself off of this screen and we are going to start. I have a lot of great stuff to share, so I want to make sure, hang on, let me get my face on here so I can say hi. Hello there. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and get started with this webinar because it is so late for many of you. It's 8 o'clock my time, PM. And I'm seeing from the chat that there's people here from all over the world, which is just really cool. Let me pull this up. So we have some from Canada. I lost my chat. Yeah, Toronto, California, in North Carolina for the holidays, Sierra Leone. So kind of a lot of people here coming from all over the place. Australia, oh my goodness. So Taiwan, I knew this was going to be that webinar where there's a lot of people from not the United States. That's where I'm tuning in from, is Minnesota. And so it's, a fairly normal time here right now. There's a lot of you are teachers. It looks like mostly teachers. For those of you that are just coming in, I've asked everyone to add in the comments where they're tuning in from and what their role is in education. So are you a teacher? Are you a homeschool parent? Are you a principal, a counselor, a summer school program coordinator? There's all kinds of, I have tutors that I work with. So tell us what you do and sort of what your interest is in PBL. So I'm seeing early childhood teachers and deputy director, director of teaching and learning, teachers, lots of teachers. And I'm just really grateful you're all here. I have a lot of amazing things to share with you. So we're going to go ahead and get started so that we don't go over too long. And a high school teacher from Southwest Washington. Thanks for joining us, Karen. Okay. I am going to share my screen with you. And I want to make sure that my video is off so that you can see all of the print and the pictures and the wonderful things I have to share with you. So if you signed up for Insider Tips, 8 key ingredients for student-led PBL success, you're in the right place. I'm really pumped to give this webinar to you. It's really all about taking the experiences that I've had over my 16-year career in project-based education and sharing them with you to help you kind of crush the challenges that I have faced and avoid those challenges to really get to the beautiful and powerful aspects of project-based learning. So in this webinar, I share with you the real challenges I've faced with student-led PBL and what I've learned from those challenges. I'll share 8 key ingredients that I have learned to have in place through tons of trial and error and problem solving and experimentation with my students. These 8 ingredients are what I believe are the ticket to just kind of smooth and streamlined project-based learning. So I want to encourage you to stay with me until the end because I'm going to offer a bonus opportunity for something that is really important for 21st century learners. It has to do with AI and how to use AI to enhance project-based learning. So stick around to learn a little bit more about that. I want to encourage you to stay till the end. I also told everyone that I would give you a Show Up Live bonus, which is a guide to sort of the talking points of people that aren't totally sure about project-based learning. So those people in your life that you really depend on their support in order to move forward with this. So if you're a homeschool parent, it might be your partner. If you're a teacher, it might be your director or your colleagues. So that Show Up Live bonus, I will give you the link for that at the end of this webinar. I also want to encourage you to turn off all your distractions, find a quiet place, turn your phone off, grab a pen and a pencil if you have printed out or pulled up the workbook that I shared with you in your email. Now is a really great time to pull that out. You don't need it, but it's helpful. Otherwise, I would encourage you to take notes. So what I really want to start with is try to figure out who it is that I'm working with right now, who I'm talking to as far as project-based learning experience goes. So number one, are you curious? Do you know about project-based learning, but you haven't really done anything with it yet? You've learned a little bit about it. Maybe you've read a couple of my blog posts. Maybe you've done my free mini series on project-based learning and getting started. So you might have a general idea of project-based learning. You're curious about it, but you don't have any experience with it yet. Or two, you're inspired. This is someone who has dabbled in project-based learning a little bit, but maybe they've been confronted with some challenges and they want to learn more. They just want to get to a place of feeling more confident with what they're currently working on. Okay, sorry, I'm in the chat right now. Okay. Shelly is saying she didn't receive a workbook. I emailed a couple. I guess it probably depends on when you signed up for this webinar. I can send it to you. It's not something you need right now. I would encourage you to take notes, and I will make sure that you get that workbook because you can always use it after. It's really just to help you put these things that I teach you today into action. Okay. All right, so yes, you're inspired, you've dabbled in it, you know that it's amazing, you really want to keep doing it, but you want a little guidance. Or three, you're super dedicated. Maybe you're pretty experienced with project-based learning and you love it and you've seen the benefits and you've seen how powerful it can be and you want to really keep that momentum going. You want to maybe get some of your colleagues in on it. You are all in. So I want you to tell me in the comments, some of you have already done that in the chat. If you're curious, you're kind of a beginner, you're inspired, you've dabbled in PBL a little bit, or you're dedicated, you're super all into this idea of project-based learning. Number two, dedicated, currently doing it, but need more strategies to make more successful. Jumping in tomorrow. Oh, cool. That's from Marina. Jumping in tomorrow with high school students. That's awesome. I hope you can get some of these ingredients into place before that happens. 2 and 3. So it seems like a lot of you are more on the very experienced end. So hopefully you can get some of these ingredients into place to kind of crush those challenges that really everyone in project-based learning deals with at some point or another. All right. So just a really quick background about myself so you know who is giving you this advice. I started off as an experiential scientist. I was working in the field. I was not a teacher when I first graduated. From college, I went out into the world and I worked on endangered species projects. And then I decided that that was enough of that. And I really wanted to get into the education side of science. And so I moved home back to Minneapolis and I got my license to teach high school science. And from my experiences in the field, I felt like I needed something different than a really traditional classroom. And so I found a project-based high school upon graduation from my licensure program and stayed at this project-based high school for 10 years. And that's where I got the bulk of my project-based learning experience. I've also done project-based learning with my own children at home. They're both younger. Right now they're 7 and 10, but we've been doing project-based learning since I can remember. And then now I work at a Montessori school, which they dabble in project-based learning here and there. It's not a project-based school. It's not entirely project-based. If you're familiar with the Montessori philosophy, it's very self-directed, but there's more to it than PBL. So they kind of do a wide variety of different approaches. So that is my experience in education. I have 10 years in a student-led project-based high school, thousands of students, thousands of PBLs. I have worked with a variety of age groups and skill levels with PBL. I've been creating PBLs and PBL curriculum for 16 years. I have 6 years working with teachers and parents like you, and I'm a lifelong lover of learning. So I'm constantly still trying out new things, trying out new strategies, reading, listening to podcasts, trying to learn as much as I can about project-based learning and how it's changing. So I tell you this only to say that I have experience with project-based learning, and I really want to share that experience with you. Student-led project-based learning is one of the most powerful and strategic methods to infuse joy, passion, and engagement into every child's learning experience. And I can say this because I've seen it so many times. Achieving this is not only possible, but it also feels effortless with a few simple ingredients, refined through years of trial and error. So that's what I'm going to give you mostly in this webinar. So what are we going to do in this webinar? Let's just, I'm just going to outline the framework or the path of what this webinar is going to look like, and hopefully we can get it done in under an hour so that I can let you go home and sleep or enjoy the rest of your day, depending on where you are in the world. So the first thing we're going to do is lay the foundation. It seems like a lot of you already have experience with project-based learning, student-led project-based learning likely. And so this part we're going to do pretty quickly, but basically I'm going to give you a series of choices together with all of you right here that lays the foundation for project-based learning moving forward. I'm going to go over some of the common challenges that I've experienced in my 16 years in PBL and what other educators have reached out to me about, and the challenges that they're facing or that they anticipate facing that they don't want to. I'm going to go over 8 ingredients that I have learned to have in place to either completely ditch these common PBL challenges altogether or to fix them when they happen to sneak in. I'm going to tell you how you can work with me beyond this webinar if you choose to do so. And then I'm going to do a live Q&A. So after this webinar, you're welcome to ask any questions that you have about project-based learning or about this webinar. And so I want to encourage you to save your questions until the end of the webinar. If you have a pen and paper nearby, write that down, and I will make sure to get to those questions at the end. Okay, and then I'm going to have kind of an office hour after this is over, after this webinar is over. If you come up with questions that you forgot to ask during this webinar or during the Q&A, feel free to shoot me over an email during this hour and I will get right back to you. I'm just going to kind of hang near my email for a little while. All right, so before getting any further into this, I'm just going to really briefly describe what I would define student-led PBL as. Authentic inquiry-based projects that are designed and led by the students themselves. So project-based learning is really a fairly clear framework. Community experts are generally involved. There's authentic experiences involved. So let's say students are really digging deeply into careers. An authentic learning experience, instead of reading about those careers, they might interview someone in a particular career of interest. That's an authentic learning experience. It's something where students really get involved. They're experiencing the concepts and the skills. There's innovative final products involved, so not just poster boards that get thrown away, but final products that are used by a relevant audience and make a real impact. There's authentic presentations, so rather than students presenting to their class and the teacher and then being done with it, they share their final products or their new skills or their knowledge or whatever with an audience that can use those skills, can use that information, or can use that final product. And then there's usually a driving question. Not everybody has their students write driving questions or yourself. Not a lot of teachers write driving questions, but I highly encourage that as a really great way to give students sort of a guide or a framework. And a driving question is exactly how it sounds. It's a question that drives the entire experience. And a lot of times the driving question has the authentic presentation, the final product, the impact, the action taker. It has those key pieces written into it. And then the student-led piece of it. Student-led project-based learning would be giving your students choice in all of these project-based elements. So your students choose the community experts. Your students might choose the authentic experiences. They might decide how they're going to present their final product. They might choose the final product. And then there's kind of a scale or a spectrum of how much choice you can give your students in that way. But fully student-led project-based learning would be giving your students choice in the bulk of these project-based learning components. So let's lay the foundation. Again, some of you may already have a foundation laid, all of your structure, whether you use technology, that kind of stuff. You might already have a vision and a plan for what you're doing. But we're just going to work through this really quickly for those that do not quite have a foundation figured out yet. And for those of you that are experienced, you might just want to give these exercises that I'm about to give you just a second glance, I guess. So you might have the foundation of PBL figured out. You might want to tweak it a little bit and use this as inspiration. All right, so I want you to answer a series of questions. There's just 4 of them. One is to try to figure out what kind of structure project-based learning is going to, I guess, how project-based learning is going to be structured into your learning day. So you might have 100% of the learning day or 100% of the curriculum be project-based learning. You might do some project-based learning and some non-PBL teaching approaches. And then you might do mostly traditional learning activities with a project-based learning experience kind of thrown in there here and there. So maybe the PBL is sort of a capstone or a final project after a unit or a session or a class of maybe more of a traditional approach. So there are a variety of ways that you can do this. There might even be other ways, other structures that you can put into place as well. So share in the comments which one of these you currently do, or which one of these structures matches what you currently do, or which of these structures do you think is what you might do if you are going to break into project-based learning anytime soon. So here and there is what I'm seeing in the comments, part and part PBL, yeah. So this part PBL, part non-PBL, or a little bit here and there is not surprisingly the most common answer because, there are a variety of different ways that kids learn. And this is the part PBL, part non-PBL is what I'm currently doing in the Montessori school that I work at. The 100% student-led PBL would have been my project-based school. That's what we were doing, all project-based learning. All right, group versus individual. Will your students do group PBLs, do you think, or independent PBLs where they're each designing and leading their own project-based learning experience? Or maybe some small group stuff here and there, or all of the above. You can add to the chat, small group, lots of small group. And that's all of these are great. I do a little bit of each of these. In my project-based school, especially, we did a variety of different cooperative learning approaches. Okay. Will PBLs be designed around standards, interests, or both? So standards, you might, design a PBL around a few standards. Interests, you might have students design their own PBLs around something that's interesting to them, like a passion project or a theme. They might design PBLs, or you might design a PBL for them around a theme or a unit. So I was a biology teacher, so an example of a theme might be invasive species or something ecological related. Okay, so we have a lot of themes, interests, and standards, all of the above. So there's a variety in the chat. And again, I do all of the above with those, especially in my project-based school. what role will technology play in authentic experiences? So what I mean by this is not necessarily, are you going to use technology in your classroom or homeschool or program or not? What I mean is, are you going to be able to be flexible enough to have these authentic learning experiences, to work with community experts, to create final products, to share final work as an authentic presentation? Are you going to be able to do this stuff in person, or are you going to need some technology to kind of boost your students along the way? So, for example, an authentic presentation could be where students go out into the community and they actually present their work to, a class of elementary students, for example. Or is it going to have to be something that is shared virtually because that flexibility isn't there to leave the classroom? Flexible with tech and non-tech and in person, all tech. Oh, cool. I teach virtually, working this year to have regional in-person presentations. That's cool. I mean, I think that part of this question is for me to help you understand that project-based learning can be done with technology, without technology. And so it's just really a matter of preference or requirements or what you just kind of the direction that you're hoping to go. So let's pretend we're talking about not my Montessori school right now, but my project-based school was 100% project-based. That's, I'd say like 95% project-based. It's mostly what we did. I did a variety of large, small, and individual. We did project-based learning experiences around standards, interests, and themes. And then we did a little hybrid of in-person and virtual experiences. So I want you to write this down and use this as the foundation for planning as you move forward. So as you move forward with project-based learning, use this as sort of the template or the canvas for whatever decisions are made about PBL after this. This is a great starting point. All right, so let's get into those PBL challenges. Now that you really know what project-based learning is, there are very specific challenges that come up with PBL. There's some challenges that come up with every learning environment and every teaching approach, but there are some that are specific to project-based learning, especially student-led. And I'm going to talk about some of those that I have experienced. And I would love for you to add into the chat any that you've experienced. So those of you that have already done project-based learning, which is many of you in here, have you experienced a specific problem-based or project-based learning challenge that you're hoping that I'll tackle in this webinar? Or if you are not experienced with project-based learning and you're just kind of dabbling in it, what is a challenge that you anticipate facing? And I will go through the ones that I've experienced the most, the ones that have been the most problematic. This is not all of them, but it's the ones that seem to be a pattern. Okay, I'm going to check out the chat quick before moving on. Parent authorization, speaker availability, time frame, time. Okay. Student buy-in, yes. Lack of engagement. Okay, we're going to get to most of those, and I will address some of them at the end in the Q&A, but I think that we're going to really get to the core of many of those challenges. So a big one, and this was written in the chat, was disengagement. Student apathy, disinterest, just flat out not interested. So in my project-based school especially, where students were given the opportunity to design and lead PBLs around their interests, around the credits that they needed. I mean, there was so much freedom and flexibility for them to design PBLs around whatever they wanted. And I would hear often, I'm not interested in anything. I don't have any interests. I don't care. Or if we're doing a group PBL, I don't care about this. I have other things on my mind. So where is that apathy coming from? you might have students that simply don't have the self-awareness yet or the skills to identify what they're interested in, especially something that they're interested in enough to turn into a project-based learning experience. They might just simply feel stumped by that question. But the more likely reason or source of apathy is that there's other things going on in their lives and they simply just can't be in this. So they might, their basic needs might not be met yet. So there's a variety of reasons why students might be apathetic, and getting to the core of that, getting to the source of it is an important part of your job as a facilitator of project-based learning. Another big challenge is low productivity. So low productivity, playing around, wandering, sleeping, distracted from the task, working on low priority tasks. So project-based, I would say that low productivity is probably a challenge in any type of classroom or learning environment. But with project-based learning, especially if it's self-directed, students are managing their own projects. They're managing their own tasks. They're managing their own time. You're not sitting them in a chair and preaching to them, maybe a little bit, you're doing some lecture here and there as sort of a supplement to this bigger experience. But for the most part, your students have time to work with that they need to use wisely. And that's not always the case in other teaching approaches. So with lecture, that wouldn't be the case. They sit in their chair and they don't have much of a choice but to be productive. I mean, I suppose they could sleep or not take notes or whatever, but PBL leaves a lot of room for being distracted just by the nature of it. And so the reason your students are likely unproductive with project-based learning is because there's this newfound freedom. They have choice, they have autonomy, and they may lack the skills to know what to do with that freedom. They might be uninterested in the work or easily distracted. Those are other possibilities for low productivity. Project incompletion is a big one. Again, for similar reasons, PBL requires students to be quite self-sufficient. So they build the skills over time of being able to direct their own projects and being able to organize themselves and their tasks and the different things that they need to do and deadlines, etc. So they're being asked to manage these projects, to manage their time, to manage their PBLs, and they may just not know how to do that. So the why project incompletion is happening is that they may lack accountability, low motivation, lack of skills to manage their own work, low expectations of themselves, or they might simply just be really unorganized. Another challenge that I face, and I saw this in the chat as well, is resistance to change. So your students are likely, let's take a step back. What I mean by resistance to change is that they don't necessarily want to do PBL at first. I get negotiating the PBL components. Some kids are like, well, I don't really want to do an authentic presentation. Can't I just present to the class? Can't I just create a poster board instead of create something that is really useful and solves a problem for a relevant audience? They will try to negotiate those PBL components. They might resist just doing project-based learning at all, so refusing to try. And the reason for that, this resistance, is one, they might be unfamiliar with PBL or just confused about what it means. They might be uncomfortable with the change. And the biggest thing that I've noticed as a high school teacher is that they want the path of least resistance. Project-based learning is not the type of learning activity where you're handed information, where your students are given a lesson plan. Their job is to do it and turn it in by this and this date. There's a correct answer. It's not like that. Your students, it's inquiry based. Your students are managing their own work. They are doing research. They're talking to people. They're talking to experts. And that is hard work. It's amazing work. but it's not as easy as doing a worksheet that's been handed to you or doing a recipe lab that's been created for you. So they might just find it to be too hard at the beginning. Another big one, and this has come up quite often with educators that I've talked to in, the last couple years, is there's a culture of low standards, meaning that there's not just a couple low quality PBLs here and there, but that it's kind of pervaded the culture. It's in the community, and it's expected that low quality work is okay. So the why a culture of low standards might creep in is because poor quality work is permitted, it's tolerated, or maybe it's happening and you're just unaware of it. It's kind of sneaking in. So this is a really big one, and I'm going to talk about a lot of ingredients that kind of nip this one in the bud. All right. So, oops, I forgot about this one. Low attendance. I wanted to talk about this one because this seems to be a real problem lately, within the last couple years, that attendance has gotten really poor. Students aren't showing up for work, for school, they're missing days, they're missing important tasks and deadlines, they're missing feedback opportunities. And unfortunately, attendance is going to be an issue with any kind of learning experience. Whether you're doing non-PBL work or PBL work, your students not being there is definitely going to impact the outcomes. And so a lot of times, most of the time, I think attendance issues are out of your control. I would love to hear anybody else's input on this, on attendance issues. I think that I'm going to get into this a little bit more with the ingredients, but I don't know how to solve this problem because I think it's out of the control of any teacher. And for homeschool parents that are listening to this, I'm sorry, it doesn't necessarily apply to you, but attendance is an issue right now. And I'm hoping that some of the ingredients that I'm going to talk to you about will, at a minimum, get kids to come to school, for those that aren't coming just because they don't want to. But I think, unfortunately, that's not usually the case. I think, you know what, I don't even need to give my opinion about this, but I would like to hear what your thoughts are on attendance issues right now. All right, so all of these challenges lead to burnout at some point. If your students are continuously apathetic, if they're disengaged, if they're unproductive, if they're not finishing their PBLs, if they're not coming to school and you're having to figure out how to work around that and make sure that they're able to meet their deadlines and finish their projects with such poor attendance, all of that is going to lead to burnout. And I've experienced it, and as a result, have really gotten these ingredients in place that have really just changed my life. So out of the challenges that I've talked about in the chat, just let me know which one of these at this point is an issue for you, the biggest issue for you. And then those that I didn't talk about, I will hopefully get to in the ingredients. Number 5, a culture of low standards, apathy. Yes. Dante, do you work with high school students? Can I ask? Dante put, okay, yes, high school students. So yeah, I mean, teenagers. It's tough. All of the above, 2 and 3. So really there's a good mixture of everything. I'm going to read Marina's comment about attendance really quick. Attendance is an issue in my school. Sad, but you're so right. High school students need to work sometimes to help with bills or watch siblings. We are a low-income school. Lack of believing they can do something different than their family. 100%. This is exactly my situation at the project-based school that I worked at. It was an alternative school with at-risk students, and there was so much of what was happening in their lives outside of school that was so out of my control. And on the upside, I think project-based learning offers growth in that area. So I got a lot of high school students that were at their previous schools that they were not doing project-based learning in, that there was very little self-direction. They had very poor attendance at those schools. And then they came to us to kind of do catch-up credit. And yes, they still didn't show up every day, but it was growth because project-based learning is something that students want to invest in because it's real life. They're interested in it. It's something that makes an impact that they can feel proud of. So I think just project-based learning in itself is sort of the key to attendance. It's not a cure-all as far as the attendance issue goes, but I have found that it has made a big difference with my students. Okay. 8 ingredients to crush those challenges. Okay, what time do we have? Whew. Okay. I'm gonna try not to rush through these, but I want to try to get done by 9 o'clock so you can all enjoy the rest of your night. So the first ingredient is to have a clear vision and a plan. You already have that foundation laid. We did that at the beginning of this webinar. And a vision provides focused and intentional direction with clear plans, goals, and outcomes in place. So you can really think about those challenges as you plan for PBLs, as you write your vision statement. And this prevents a lot of the PBLs because when you plan with PBL challenges in mind, they're less likely to surface. So how? How do you create a vision? How do you create a plan? Develop a vision statement. So this is my vision statement at the bottom. This is an example. To empower individuals through innovative education and personalized learning, fostering lifelong learners committed to positive global change. And then develop goals that are necessary to achieve that vision and create plans to meet those goals. So that foundation, that vision, the plans, your goals, all of that is going to hopefully have these challenges in the back of your mind as you're developing these things. All right, the second ingredient is a facilitator mindset. What I mean by that is that with project-based learning, especially when it's self-directed, there's a mindset shift from teacher and director of learning to coach, mentor, guide, and facilitator of learning. So you are, in effect, giving students agency and autonomy, leadership and self-direction skills, strong student-teacher relationships, and confidence. And doing this prevents things like apathy, low productivity, and low quality because your students are in the driver's seat. They're making decisions that they can be proud of. They're creating, they're building these skills that make them feel more confident. So instead of sitting around and not knowing what to do and then being, not being productive or producing low quality work or apathy, you are giving them the opportunity to be in the driver's seat. So you're guiding, they are leading. So how do you do this? How do you shift that mindset? One is to just regularly and consistently self-reflect. So every day after I after I have a day with my project-based learners, I ask myself, what did I do to help them help themselves instead of control the situation, instead of do it for them? And then ask instead of answer. So a lot of times it's in my nature. I don't know about yours. I don't know if it's the teacher in me or the parent in me or what it is, but no matter how long I've been in project-based learning or have worked with self-directed learners, I feel like when they ask me a question, I want to give them the answer. Instead of doing that, so if they ask, say they're doing a PBL on careers, and they say, who can I talk to? Who can I interview? Instead of me being like, oh, there's this guy I know, he would be great for this. I ask them, how can you find out? How can you find somebody? Where can you look? So it's facilitating instead of telling. And then be open-minded and willing to continue learning. So again, I still, after 16 years in project-based education, still have to do a mindset check for being a facilitator rather than a teacher or rather than controlling the situation. So I have to continuously be open-minded and reflect and check my behaviors. Will shifting your mindset be a challenge for you? Add a yes or no in the chat. Okay, the third ingredient is to have a supportive community. And by supportive community, I mean, hang on, let me go in the chat quick. No, okay, that mindset shift is a little bit of no, a little bit of yes, maybe. Yeah, I hope it's not a challenge for you. That if you can just dive right in and give your students autonomy and control over their own learning journey, that is ideal. So absolutely dive in to that facilitator role. Okay, so what were we talking about? A supportive community. So this ingredient is a supportive community for you. So a community of educators that collaborate, support, listen to, partner with, and understand one another and share goals. So the effect of this is you can really talk about a lot of these challenges. You can collaborate on projects together. You can use each other as a sounding board. I know for me, my husband is someone that I try to talk about project-based learning with all the time. And as good intentioned as he is, he just can't understand. He's a software salesman. So it's nice to have at least one person that knows what you're doing and is doing this with you and understands the challenges and has really great ideas to share and that kind of thing. So this prevents educator burnout, and when you're not feeling burned out and when you're feeling supported and when you're feeling energized, the challenges that I talked about are much easier to handle. All right, how do you get that network? So hopefully you're in a project-based school, or you're in a school, or you're in a homeschool co-op that has a variety of colleagues or a director or a partner who supports you in this and can talk to you about this kind of stuff, even if it's just one person. I wanted to say one way to get that, or one way to help get somebody on board that is not currently on board with project-based learning, is that Show Up Live bonus. So I'll give you that at the end. And I highly recommend pulling that out and using it for talking points and to really help them see the benefits of project-based learning, and so that they can be that support system for you. Get active online. I think that's a great place to start. There's a lot of PBL communities on Facebook. I myself have an experiential learning Facebook community. You can always pop in there and put your feelers out there, see who is interested in maybe forming a collaboration pod or a group of people that can meet every now and again. So I currently, every month, I get on a Zoom call with 4 other project-based educators from around the world, actually. One of them's in Canada and the rest are in the United States. But we meet regularly and we talk about the challenges we're facing with project-based learning. We give each other ideas. Sometimes we partner on projects with our various schools. So in the chat, I'm curious if you have a community, even if it's just one person. Is there one person that you can go to for support, for ideas, for venting, for really just talking to somebody who understands? Okay, we have a little mix of both. It looks like most of you do, and that's really great. And like Marina said, I don't really have a community yet, but I know many educators that would be willing. I think there's a lot of people out there like you that if you feel like you need a community to form, there are other people out there that are really into project-based learning, and that would be a really great person to chat with. Okay. All right, follow through. Oh, this is such a big one. And what I mean by follow through is that you're following through with your vision, with your goals, with your plans, with your expectations, strategies, routines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So an example is I'm just really notoriously bad at this, at follow through. So this summer, I wanted my own children every day this summer to read quietly for 30 minutes. And we did it for about a week, and then it fell off somewhere along, and we just never got back to it. So that's what I mean by when you put a system or a routine or something into place, make sure you're following through with it. Because if you don't, you're going to look flimsy. Your students are going to try to negotiate with you. That's where low standards creep in, low quality work creeps in, project incompletion, low productivity, all of these things. If you have systems built and put in place and then you don't follow through with them, that's a problem. And when you do have these systems in place, the effect is that the expectations are clear. It's a smooth and predictable learning day, and the precedent is set by you. You are modeling, you're demonstrating this commitment to follow through. So how do you ensure that you're following through? One of my tips for you is to only put time into tools and systems that you'll actually use. So for example, every year during back to school season, I put together a Google Calendar for what we're going to do for the next 3 months, let's say, or just until second semester. And then I never look at it again. And it's because I'm just not a Google Calendar type of person. So I operate better with paper calendars and planners. And so that's what I should stick with because I'm a lot more likely to follow through. So find the tools that work for you, find the tools that you'll stick with, and then hold yourself accountable. Set clear goals for yourself, track, reflect, and revisit those systems that you put into place, those routines that you've put into place. Give yourself visual reminders. So if I, for example, have to use Google Calendar to plan my month around or plan my day around or whatever. In order for me to make sure that I use it, I might have it pop up on my screen. That's the first thing that comes up, right? So give yourself visual reminders and then let your students be your accountability partners. Have them keep you accountable. If you have a system in place, ask them to make sure you stick with it and to remind you when you're going off track. And that's probably really just the case with everything, not with necessarily project-based learning, just in any situation where you're teaching or working with students, follow through is so key. And it's key for them too. Ingredient number 5 for successful PBL is systems and routines that are very specific to project-based learning. So student-led project-based learning gives students choice, voice, and autonomy in a structured way. Yes, it's okay that there's structure, and that's needed because it gives your students predictable structure and routine. So the result of having structure in place, even if, let's say you have 3 hours where your students are working on project-based learning experiences in the morning, you can have structure within those 3 hours. That's kind of what we do in our Montessori school. The first 3 hours of any Montessori day at the school that I work in is self-directed. Students can pick and choose what they want to do, but it's structured. There's check-ins. There is checklists that they make for themselves. There are materials that make that structure just more plausible for these young kids. So the effect is that it's smooth, seamless, streamlined, predictable, and clear. And this prevents things like low productivity. If there's systems in place for how to utilize time, for example, they're more likely to use that time wisely. It prevents so many of the challenges, but a culture of low standards, project incompletion, and PBL resistance as well. So what are some systems you can get into place? You can have systems around PBL design, tracking project-based learning, I guess checkpoints, managing deadlines, feedback sessions, assessments, and reflection. So these are all important parts of the PBL process, and you can develop systems around every single one of these. And then make sure that those systems are predictable and consistent. So it should be written into the schedule and it should be routine. Your students should expect these systems to be in place. And then stick to those routines. So which of these above, so PBL design, tracking PBL tasks, etc., which of these do you need the most help developing strategies or systems for? Let me know in the chat. Oh, I'm gonna go back a little bit. Okay, feedback, says Dante, thank you. Okay, oh, I'm gonna go back just a second. Marina said that her students will keep her accountable for follow through. That's great. PBL design, tracking PBL tasks. Let me go back to the list. Sorry. Okay, so these things here are major components or major parts of the process of the PBL experience. And I have systems for every single one of these. So let me give you an example. For feedback, actually, I'm going to talk a lot about feedback in a second. So let's just say tracking PBLs. I have a system where my students literally use a spreadsheet and they put a check mark next to every task that they've completed. It's a really simple tracking system. Deadlines, okay. Okay. The sixth ingredient is direct and simple scaffolding materials. So I'd be curious to know from those of you that are already doing project-based learning if your students have specific guiding materials that they use to help walk them through particular phases of project-based learning. So by guiding materials, I mean templates developed for and shared with students for them to use that scaffold and guide step by step through the PBL process from design to presentation. So this picture right here is of a template that I created specifically for a business PBL that they were doing. So they designed, developed, and started their own businesses. And that was very cool. But they wouldn't have been able to do it without this kind of step-by-step workbook that they went through. So the effect of having these guiding materials is that they're self-sufficient. There's clarity around what should be done, what the tasks are. Students are more productive, and the PBL quality in itself, if your students are designing their own PBLs, the PBL quality is higher. So this is an example of a really simple guiding material that my students use. They use this to summarize the PBL that they're working on, the topic, the driving question, community experts that they're going to work with, and so on. And this prevents codependency and resistance, low productivity and apathy, low quality PBLs. So I keep saying low quality PBLs are prevented because I like to use a PBL design workbook. Here, I'm going to go to this right here, PBL design workbook. It walks them exactly through the components that need to be included in a PBL if they're designing their own. So that ensures that they have an authentic presentation in mind. It ensures that they're actually working with a community expert. So this workbook just keeps them on track to include all of the PBL components that should be included. You can also have guiding materials like a personal learning plan, a PBL execution toolkit. So that might include things like task lists or check-in forms or feedback forms, that kind of thing. Assessments, and then PBL portfolio template, which is just right here in this picture down below. It says my PBL portfolio. It's really just where they document their work as they go so that they can look back on it. And then the seventh ingredient, which I think is the most important as it relates to project-based learning, is feedback, feedback, feedback. I went a lot of years without giving my students regular and consistent feedback. So what I mean by feedback is planned feedback sessions. And that could be given by teachers, peers. They can self-evaluate. They can use community experts for feedback. I think they can use AI for feedback if that's something that you're interested in. It should certainly not be their only form of feedback, but it can be a supplement. And then feedback should be intentional, consistent, expected, and scheduled. So an example, here, I'll give you an example in 1 second. So the effect of having feedback, the biggest one in my mind is that really deals with this problem of low quality work. So a culture of low standards. If there is consistent feedback, there's just much less chance of there being low quality work because you can check that. It prevents a culture of low standards, project incompletion, and low attendance. And the project incompletion, if you're giving your students feedback, you're seeing where they are in this process. If they're failing to complete certain tasks or meet certain deadlines, they're gonna not complete their projects. And you seeing what they're working on, you giving them consistent feedback, gives you a glimpse into where they are in the process. And then, so feedback gives students quality PBL designs, student pride and confidence, and this growth mindset. And that last one, growth mindset, is so important to me, that it gives them this idea that they can strive to improve. I think the lack of interest in improving is part of this culture of low standards. And feedback kind of nips that in the bud. All right. So how do you give feedback? You can give feedback at so many points in the project-based learning process. So you can give students feedback on their PBL designs if they're designing their own. You can give them feedback as they're progressing through completing their PBL. Drafts, final outcomes, student-designed evaluations. If your students are creating their own rubrics, for example, you can give them feedback on that. You should give them feedback on their rubrics. You can give them feedback on presentations, their reflections, and so much more. And then build feedback systems into your schedule. So one of the things with like follow-through, we talked about follow-through and systems. Feedback systems that you follow through with are also really beneficial. So for example, I might have my students do a progress meeting, like a progress circle, which is basically every Wednesday, my students get together in a circle and they share what they've completed so far, or they share their final product, or they share their presentation, and then they give each other feedback. That's an example of a feedback system that is routine. My students know it's coming every Wednesday. They know they're going to get feedback from their peers. And I already talked about that. Okay. The eighth ingredient, and this is arguably the most important. I know I said feedback is, but I changed my mind. I think building a strong PBL culture is the #1 ingredient. I would say the bulk of the time that educators get in touch with me and tell them about a challenge they're having with PBL, having a strong PBL culture is typically the solution. And so what I mean by that is that the culture's expectations, daily tasks, values, priorities, impact, et cetera, are specific to project-based learning. So in a project-based learning classroom, the expectation is that presentations are going to be authentic. The expectation or the norm is that students do their own research, they find their own answers, they work with community experts. These are all normal in a project-based learning environment. And so having that culture, having students walk into a classroom and expecting that's what's going to happen in this room today, that is having a solid PBL culture. And what that does is lead students to producing quality work. They challenge each other and hold each other accountable. They design incredible PBLs if you're going to have your students do that. Students become more self-sufficient. They're lifelong learners, so they get to this point of wanting to ask questions. They get to a point, believe me, they do get to a point where they run into your room, and instead of being apathetic and telling you, I have no idea what I want to do a project on, they know that when they walk into the door, they're going to be doing PBL that day. And they run in and say, Sarah, this is what I'm going to do. I have this idea. I got this idea on the bus today coming here, and I want to do this PBL. That is the result of a really strong PBL culture. And this literally every single challenge. I told you, whenever somebody gives me a challenge, having a strong PBL culture is typically a great starting point, at least one great solution. So how do you build this impressive PBL culture? Um, One is PBL training. I think that a lot of your students may not know what PBL is. They may have no idea what it's about. They don't know the components. They don't know the difference between a PBL and a project. And so PBL training is a really good way, making sure your students are really confident and comfortable with what project-based learning is, so that those negotiations stop happening, so that they expect this is what PBL is, and this is what we're doing in here. Write norms and expectations, and I suggest doing this with your students. So by norms and expectations, I mean norms that are specific to project-based learning. So a norm could be, before asking me a question, how can you help yourself? Or some of them on here, be respectful. A lot of these norms on here are just how it should be in any learning environment. But another norm might be feedback. Everybody will give and receive helpful and kind feedback. That's just an example of a norm, an expectation, something that your students know happens in this room. Relationship building is super important, especially if you're doing interest-based, project-based learning. Skill building is a really good way to build that solid PBL culture. So an example of a PBL skill is time management. Your students are managing their own projects. They're managing their own tasks. You're not doing that for them. So building that skill helps them be more confident in that. Work each into your routine and follow through with them. So, those other ingredients of having systems and follow through, you can have systems and routines related to building a really incredible PBL culture. So in the past, how much has culture building been a priority in your classroom or your homeschool or your school or your program or whatever you're working with? Let's get a little conversation in the chat. It's 9 o'clock, so we're gonna finish up here. Culture building is #1 priority from Marina. Someone asked, what would be the purpose of student-created evaluation rubric? The purpose of that is, if you're having your students design and lead their own project-based learning experiences, you can have a generic rubric, but if they're designing and leading their own PBLs that are very specific to them and their experience, a generic umbrella rubric just wouldn't make sense. So I guess when I say a student-generated rubric, it's a rubric that is customized to exactly what it is that they're doing. Okay. Let's move it along here. I'm sorry, I don't mean to rush, and I just want to make sure we get to a Q&A. So I am going to continue, and then we'll get to the questions at the end. So do I need much experience with student-led PBL to take it on without the shift or the challenges taking over my life? And the answer is no, and it's these ingredients that are really going to help with that. So I recommend, when you're done with this webinar, just start with one, even one of those ingredients put into play. Just, let's say, feedback, or a couple of really great systems, or a method or a strategy of building a really strong PBL culture. Put one of those ingredients into place and you'll be blown away by the impact that just one of them can have. So the takeaway is that student-led project-based learning is 100% doable without the challenges taking over your life. And having these specific ingredients in place make that a lot more achievable. These 8. Strong PBL, feedback. I mean, all of these are great to have. If you can get all of these ingredients into place, absolutely do that. Because what you'll get is this smooth, seamless, streamlined, and predictable PBL experience. Okay, so you can certainly go and hunt and peck around the internet and find all of the how-tos of these things. So let's go here. You can figure out the materials. Absolutely. You can create those guiding materials. You can develop your own feedback sessions. You can create your own systems. You can do all that. There's no question. I believe that you can do it. Or we can do it together. So I've given you the what. I can also give you the how if you want it. You are perfectly capable of putting all of these ingredients into place without me, but I can help with PBL Teacher Academy, which is open for enrollment today through Sunday. And what this is a comprehensive self-paced digital course where you learn how to organize and facilitate student-led project-based learning with very simple strategies and clear systems that foster a culture of creativity and self-direction. And what's included in this program is you will do all of these things in this one comprehensive program. So my favorite part about this is that it's comprehensive. It includes literally everything so that you don't have to go hunt and peck around the internet. You don't have to sift through all my blogs to try to piece things together. You will map out a plan. You will craft a vision. You will be able to shift to that facilitator mindset with some of the tools and trainings in this course. There's PBL culture and community building, a whole module dedicated to just that, skill building, PBL training, etc. You will map out a plan for designing and aligning PBLs with your learning goals, whether that be standards or interests, etc. You will plan facilitation, implementation, and project management strategies. This is like your ultimate how-to guide of getting students from point A to point B with any project-based learning experience. You will use, I will have all of the guiding materials. So all of those guiding materials that I mentioned, which I'll show you in a second, those are all available for you to use. You will map out a plan for reflecting on and evaluating learning outcomes and launching student-led PBL. So the modules that are included are PBL culture building, PBL design, PBLs in action, outcomes and assessments, and moving forward, which is really, for those of you that are just all in and dedicated, this particular module is really about scaling PBL. All of those guiding materials are included. So that PBL design template I talked about, there's workbooks for both elementary students and secondary students. There's a PBL execution toolkit, an assessment packet. And I talk more about in PBL Teacher Academy, the purpose for and how students can generate their own rubrics and their own assessments. And then a project-based learning portfolio template. So within this course, there's 5 training modules, guiding materials, all of those guiding materials, and a certificate of completion, and lifetime access on top of that. But you also get 4 hours of office hours with me. So over the next 8 weeks, I'm going to incorporate 4 hours for you to pop into a Zoom call and ask me whatever questions that you have. You can utilize the full hour. You can come in for 5 minutes. But those hours are yours. There's also a private community for course members only. So if you're one of those people that's really looking for a community of PBL teachers, that's looking for a partner, that's looking for a support group, this gives you that. There's a design thinking module. This is a bonus. Design thinking really helps students create final products that are of quality work and are impactful. So that is a really good tool for really eliminating or reducing the low quality work problem. And then small business attention. I'm a teacher most of the time. So I am here to serve you, and I get back to you on email literally within the hour. I have your best interest in mind, and I want to work with you. I want you to email me. I want you to ask me these questions. I want to be part of your support system. So with the core program, the 4 weeks of office hours, the private members community, that design thinking bonus that really tackles the low quality work problem, and just that personal attention that I can give you and offer is a value of about $537. But I am offering PBL Teacher Academy for $217 for that whole program and lifetime access. And I want it to be reasonable. I want it to be something that you feel really good about spending your money on. So I don't want to charge you $537. So $217 for PBL Teacher Academy from now until the 18th, which is when it closes. And if you're interested in this right now, you know I want to do this. This link right here, I'm actually going to put it in the chat for you. experientiallearningdepot.com/PBL Teacher Academy. I'm going to get that in there. And that's really just a page where you can learn more. And if you choose to enroll, that's an option. But there's a lot more details about the program in there if you're wanting to take some time. So these are a couple of members of PBL Teacher Academy. Both of them signed on, they became members, I think, last summer. So Jade, who's an educator, said the course is as advertised. It's comprehensive, straightforward, clear, and well organized. And I just want to read that part because the comprehensive piece is really what I was after. And I'm glad she saw it that way. I wanted all of it to be included so that you don't have to, outside of this program, continue to find books, continue to find blogs, continue to find resources. It's all there for you, which is with the purpose of making your life so much easier. And then Quinay, who is a homeschool co-op director and also homeschools her own kids, she signed up last August also. And she said, this course is so well organized and structured. It has helped me to make the ideas of PBLs feel more concrete. It's given me specific structure to start exploring and implementing PBL. And I love this and chose this particular review because it gave her confidence. And that is really the whole point. And then Ryan, who's a high school educator, he and his colleagues, all of his colleagues enrolled last year in this also, so as to be streamlined and to really be consistent across the board, across their school. And he said, I did self-directed PBL during the second semester of last year. It was the most fun I have had in the classroom. I've loved my job for a long time. So this is saying something. And that makes me so happy. Not just because, you know, he's already somebody who loves his job. He loves teaching, and that's fantastic. But PBL has made it that much better. And then over here, he says, teaching, Sarah is exceptionally knowledgeable and elaborates on a teaching philosophy and teaching strategies that are highly motivating to students of all ages. And I think that's the beautiful thing about project-based learning, and kind of what we were talking about with the attendance issue, is that project-based learning tends to be intrinsically motivating because students are invested in the outcomes. The outcomes are real and the outcomes matter to someone. And when you enroll as a group, I really highly recommend that. You can certainly enroll independently, but if you enroll in a group, if your whole team enrolls, if your whole group enrolls, if all of your staff members enroll, the training and materials are consistent. There's a built-in support system. There's increased motivation, skills standardization, and a huge cost savings. So when you enroll as a group, which I would, if you're interested in that, email me at sarah@experientiallearningdepot.com, because the enrollment process will look a little different. But group enrollment is cost savings. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you quickly about that bonus that I was talking about at the very beginning, the fast action bonus. It's a Going Digital with Student-Led PBL bonus module. And what it does is give you additional training and materials for taking project-based learning and doing it using technology. So creating final products digitally, doing authentic presentations digitally. I recently added a lesson to this bonus module specifically on how to use AI to enhance project-based learning, should you choose to take that direction. Not everybody wants to, and that's totally fine. But this bonus you will get also if you enroll by the end of the day. So there's all these fears, right? Like I've experienced every one of these: fear of chaos, fear of failure, fear that students aren't going to get it, and it actually experiencing that, students not really getting it at first, the fear of a learning curve, the fear of doing it alone and not having that support. That's a big fear and a realized problem for a lot of people. The lack of faith in yourself and the fear of time, not having enough time. And PBL Teacher Academy really squashes those fears because I give you all these things. This program gives you the confidence. It gives you a support community. It gives you training. It gives you systems. It gives you all the materials, saving you loads and loads of time. So what's in it for you? Professional development hours, practical resources, that community. I just talked about all of that, so I won't go through it again. But it's more than just a course. It's a journey, and it honestly, it will transform your students' lives. Project-based learning does. I've seen it over and over and over again. And I want this journey to be smooth for you. And PBL Teacher Academy helps you do that. And I'm so confident in this program that I am willing, it's 100% guarantee if you don't get the results that you want within 7 days. And you can email me, tell me what's up, and I will gladly give you your money back. So if the fear is, I don't know if this is going to be right for me, just know that there's 100% money back guarantee within 7 days. So here's that link again. I'm going to come up here and make sure that it's in there. Oh, did I? Yeah, okay. Whoops. Now everyone gets to see this page. I accidentally clicked on that link that I put in there. Let's get this back up. So the link is in the chat. Ooh, sorry guys, present. Okay. So there's that link. Again, the bonus is there for you if you enroll today. Okay, so I promised a show up live bonus, and I'm going to add that to the chat. And because this is being recorded, I'm not going to say it out loud, but I am going to add show up live bonus. It's in the chat, and all you have to do is click on this link and it will bring you to where you can download. I want to make sure I do it right. Okay. And if someone wants to click on that and let me know if that is working, that would be great. So this show up live bonus, just for being here and staying here till the end, you get this guide, A Skeptic to Supporter Guide, Winning Hearts and Minds for Student-Led Project-Based Learning. And this is really the talking points for those people in your life that you want to really support you through this. Okay. So if you are ready to enroll, you can click on that link and the page looks like this, and you can click on enroll and it'll bring you to this checkout page. You can check out in a variety of ways. And then you will be emailed this link, which just gives you login information so you can access your course. And then you will also have immediate access to that members community that I told you about. And then this is what it looks like. This is what the program looks like. So there's all these modules I told you about. There's videos within each of these, and all of your materials are in there. So this is what you get. Oh, and up here, there's this little discussion box. So you can at any time, literally over your lifetime, add any question to this discussion box and I will get it and respond to it, as will everyone else who's a member of this course. Okay, so remember your why. You're curious, you're inspired, or you're ultra dedicated. And then decide if this is the right program for you. It's maybe not for everybody, and that's okay. If you have any questions about this program, you can ask them now. And you can reach out to me anytime between now and the 18th when the program closes for enrollment. Okay, so let's get into the Q&As. I really am curious about your experiences and what questions you have, and we're 20 minutes over. I'm so sorry. So I understand some of you have had to leave. I am going to exit here and show my face again. Oops. Okay. Okay, so if you have any questions, please add them to the comments. I would love to chat through this with you. If you have to leave, absolutely, I understand. It's almost 9:30 here. Okay, Marina, I am ready to enroll, but I would like to ask this. Is it possible to follow up your course and be doing it in class at the same time? That's a really good question. Yes. So part of the reason I wanted it to be self-paced is so that you can take your time with it. You can do it for as long or as little as you want. You can use some of the modules and not some of the modules. You can always contact me. So Quinay is an example of somebody who enrolled in my course, and I still hear from her regularly. She enrolled a year ago, and she still contacts me. So what I would suggest is that you start little by little. There's some people that can take this course and crush it in a couple weeks. There's some people that got it last August and started working on it this past summer, so in June. You can really do it however you'd like. Just know that I am here for you throughout that entire process and literally forever. It's a lifetime course. So you have access to me always, and you can pace yourself however you'd like in the course. Okay, after the completion of the program, can we have a certificate? Yes, 100%. It's built in. So when you've completed the course program, you will get a certificate of completion for 6 course hours. I should say that depending on what you're using that certificate for and where you are, I can't promise that. For example, I need a certificate of completion for CEUs in order to renew my license in Minnesota. Minnesota would take this certificate of completion from me as part of those hours. I don't know that every state or location does. So just know that you will get a certificate, but I can't promise that it will be accepted by whoever you want it accepted from. Thank you, Marina. I'm so glad you were here. This was really awesome and really fun to talk to you, and you were so amazing in the chat and so engaged. I loved it. So thank you for coming. All right, Shelly, I love PBLs, but at the school where I teach, our course content is very tightly bound to the BAA Basic Academic Attainment set by the local education department, which must be completed within the year. Since PBLs take more time, any suggestions on how to strike a balance between the two? Thank you. Yes, okay. So I'm just going to answer Marina's question really quick because it's really brief. Yes, Marina, I will take a purchase order. You just email me and we'll work it out. Okay. So back to Shelly's question. Yes. So I don't know what basic academic attainment is. Is it standards, specific standards that you have to meet in your curriculum? Yes. Okay. So in PBL Teacher Academy, I show a couple things. One, there's an entire lesson that's like 20 minutes. It's my longest one that is dedicated to designing PBLs around standards. And it can be any standard. It can be any, like I'm a science teacher, so I often have to design PBLs around next generation science standards. And so I give an entire tutorial on how to do that, how to design PBLs around not just a standard, but many. So the cool thing, and in response to your question about time, is that one PBL can cover a laundry list of standards. It doesn't have to be one PBL for one standard. You can design it in a way where it covers a variety of standards. You can also choose to do project-based learning as much or as little as you'd like. So like I said at the beginning, you can do 100% project-based learning, Or you can do one project-based learning experience while you're doing other things, or you can use project-based learning as a final project after having gotten through all of these standards. So there's a variety of different ways you can do it. And I go into detail and address all of these things in PBL Teacher Academy. What is the minimum number of meetups with students for a PBL to be fully conducted? That's a hard question to answer because it's going to depend on a lot of things. It's going to depend on how much time you have with your students. It's going to depend on the nature of the PBL. So let me give you an example. So I have had students do project-based learning experiences on careers, a career of their choice. So they design a PBL around nursing, for example, and they can do that in a week, in 2 weeks. Maybe an hour or two a day for 2 weeks, and that is sufficient amount of time to get a project-based learning experience like that completed. There are others that may take 8 weeks, 12 weeks. So I've also had my students design and build a pollinator garden. That will take a lot more time. That will require a lot more meetups, just because the nature of the project is so much more in depth and requires time. So I hope that answers your question. It really just depends on a lot of things, mostly the way the PBL is designed. And you can design a PBL to fit with your schedule. So if you only have 2 weeks to work on this on a PBL with students, you wouldn't design it in a way that it's going to take 8 weeks. And I show you exactly how to do that on PBL Teacher Academy. Okay, so the trick is to see which standards can be included within a PBL design. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to put Shelly with the standards. Shoot. I was going to put a link to a blog post that I have about PBL and standards, and it would require me getting out of here to find the link. But if you go to my website, experientiallearningdepot.com, and you want a little bit more information about standards as they kind of fit into project-based learning, if you just go to my search bar and type in standards in my website, it'll show you that blog post. So that might be able to give you a little bit more background about standards. So yeah, I hope that helps. Okay. A very big thank you, Ayman. That's so wonderful. If anybody has any other questions beyond this or questions about PBL Teacher Academy or purchase orders or group enrollment or anything like that, please email me, Sarah@experientiallearningdepot.com, and I will be sure to get back to you really quickly. I am so grateful you've stayed with me this long. We went a half an hour longer than I expected to, and I'm just really grateful you were here. It was wonderful to talk to you, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks so much, everyone.